A few days after winning the Big 12 women's basketball tournament, the WVU women's basketball team was recognized during a baseball game at Kendrick Family Ballpark, and the players all wore matching t-shirts to that game. No, they didn't say Big 12 champs, even though that's a factually accurate statement. No, it was a different slogan on these t-shirts. 3 lines of text on a white t-shirt. Everyone watches women's sports. And that sentiment will definitely be true this weekend when the WVU women's basketball team hosts NCAA Tournament games at Hope Coliseum for the first time in 34 years. And it's also what inspired the name of this episode of the Gold and Blue Nation podcast, which is brought to you, as always, by Mountain State Oral and Facial Surgery, your premier dental implant destination. Nick Farrell here, alongside our Mountaineer basketball insider, Sydney Cariel, to get you ready for what's bound to be an electric weekend of college hoops here in Morgantown. It officially gets underway Saturday afternoon when 5-seed Kentucky takes on 12-seed James Madison, and then it's the game that everybody around here is talking about, 4-seed West Virginia, the Big 12 tournament champ, taking on the unanimous champion out of the MAC, the Miami University Redhawks, 13th seed in the tournament. Okay, Sid, so you've covered this team all season long. Of course, you were in the room for the Selection Sunday celebrations. How excited is this team, not just to find out who it was going to play Sunday night in the tournament, but to be hosting games, which it found out on Saturday that it was going to be a host?
Yeah, so Saturday they finally found out, because it wasn't a given. If we think back to, yes, they won the Big 12 championship, but it's still, you never know, right? So Coach Kellogg told us the story how they had a list of teams, written out in alphabetical order, because they announced it in alphabetical order on Saturday. And as they were going through the list, checking it off one by one, and of course, West Virginia W later in the alphabet. So it took forever to get there. But finally, it was almost, I think there was excitement and a sense of relief at the same time. And just like, yes, we did it. It felt, like a very good chance. But until you finally heard your name come across that screen, was it like, okay, yes, let's do this thing. So I think it was a little bit of mixture of both. And Sydney Shaw said the same thing on Sunday. She was asked by Cody Nesper, our guy, did this kind of feel like a relief? And she said, actually, I was relieved 10 minutes ago when we found out who we were playing. So there's a lot of different mixture of emotion, but I also think they're kind of ready to get back to practicing for a team, not just, getting on the court and making sure they still got their shots down and everything. But now they have a focus. They know they got Miami University, and we got 5 days or however many days to prepare for it.
Yeah, it'll be 2 weeks essentially between games for this team since beating TCU 62-53 in the Big 12 championship game in Kansas City. Sid, I want to know if you remember this conversation. We both covered the senior day game against Cincinnati, which I think was on March 1st. That was the regular season finale. West Virginia won that game 118-60, scoring the most points it had ever scored against an opponent in a Big 12 game, or maybe even in a conference game ever. And you and I had a quick conversation and said, nobody should want to play this West Virginia team. If they shoot like they did, if they defend like they did against Cincinnati, nobody is going to look at WVU and be like, good, this is great. No, in fact, it was the exact opposite. And that proved to be true out in Kansas City. I mean, this team is really, really hot right now and is combining that tenacious pressure defense with some really solid offensive execution in key moments.
Yeah, that game, I do remember that because we were just like, what did we just watch? Especially Sydney Shaw having the night of her life in front of, she had at least 10 family and friends walk down for senior night with her. So that was awesome to see there. But yeah, I remember that. That was just such a full, complete game. And I know Coach Kellogg will never say that they played, at a full 4-quarter game, because at the end of that one, he had a little whatever. But that felt like it. And that looked like what this team is capable of. I do think in the Big 12 tournament, WVU getting pushed to the limits by Arizona State a little bit. I know the score 67-54 might not show it if you're just looking at the score, but remember that game was close. So kind of getting pushed to the limit there. And then against Colorado, the last second shot, winning by a point, I almost think helped the team more throughout the Big 12 tournament, just because you had to overcome maybe struggling a little bit. And then also to that, I don't know if we all believe in momentum, but I think that helped roll over, especially because you're playing games in such a short amount of time that you just have to keep whatever you had from the night before, just keep it going into the next game. So I almost think not that you want close games like that ever, but that might have maybe helped this team like have a little jolt of adrenaline and just continue it going.
It's super interesting, Sid, thinking back, the Arizona State game, probably early fourth quarter, was a 2-point game. The Colorado game came down to the final play. There really was nothing comfortable about beating the TCU, the regular season champ, but that game maybe felt like the most comfortable game for West Virginia out in Kansas City. And that's, of course, due in part to the fact that a couple of key Horned Frog players were in foul trouble, and that definitely helped West Virginia. But isn't that kind of amazing looking back that the TCU game, the championship game, was the one where West Virginia maybe had a little bit of room to breathe there late?
Yeah, it almost seemed like there was a moment probably in the fourth quarter where you just kind of were watching this like, this team's going to win this thing. They got this. They just had a different kind of pep in their step, if you will. They never looked tired. They never looked defeated, even when TCU kind of made a run to come back. It just never seemed that they were going to let that one slip away. And I think that's huge to have rolling into the NCAA tournament.
Okay, so if you've been following Sydney's coverage of this team, not just in the Big 12 tournament, but throughout the season, you know who the stars of this team are, right? You mentioned Sydney Shaw a moment ago, Sid. Her and Gia Cook both average in double figures in scoring. They're really the three-point brigade, right? Mm-hmm. Shaw was the best three-point shooter in the Big 12 Conference in the regular season, and Cook was the leading scorer on this team in the regular season. But I think it's obvious that the player who means the most to this team from a production standpoint is Jordan Harrison, right? J.J. Quinterly was the star of this team last year. Jordan has stepped in essentially to the role that JJ had. Maybe not scoring at the same clip as Quinterly, but the defense has definitely been there. Harrison was always a terrific defensive player, don't get me wrong, but this year she's really emerged sort of as the tip of the spear in that press that gives all kind of trouble to opposing offenses. And then she's scoring it really consistently, too, on the road to being the tournament's most outstanding player. When you look at Harrison late in the season, into the postseason, what's she doing well, Sid?
It's funny because you think about it, and she's mentioned it a few times, where in the very beginning of this season, she kind of actually started off slow. And it wasn't a concern, I don't think, by any means to the team. By slow, I mean maybe just not scoring in double digits as much as maybe we as people watching would have thought. But obviously she was contributing in other ways with her defense, of course, and always being the backbone there. But the back half of the season just really has taken on a life of its own for Jordan. It's so interesting because I was listening back to interviews from 2024, so her sophomore season here, and it's just like a little reminder here that she almost decommitted from playing at Stephen F. Austin with Coach Kellogg her freshman year. So could you imagine if she decided, never mind, I'm not going to stick with Coach Kellogg, I'm going to go a different way, how different things would be, not just for WVU, but for her as a player. But she full faith in Coach Kellogg full faith in her, and eventually I don't think her success has surprised Coach Kellogg, though. The way he talks, he's like, I knew she was capable of doing all of this, and always called her just the heartbeat of our team, really, the motor that keeps this team rolling. So if I was an opposing team, I'd be scared when she has the ball, or if she's guarding me. That's what I'd be scared of.
Yeah, for sure, Sid. She had put up a goose egg against TCU, the final meeting between those teams in the regular season. In the 6 games since, she's scored in double figures and has had at least 4 assists in every game, including a 20-point, 10-rebound double-double against Cincinnati in that game that it seemed like everybody was setting career highs in. That was the first double-double of her career. So the guard
Which is a crazy stat. First double-double of her career. Like, I remember you said that. Didn't you broadcast that game? I remember
Correct.
You said it. And it was like, what? Felt like I had to double check you, but I would never do that. You always have the stats right.
There is a statistician, got to give credit to, I believe it was Joe Mitchin who was statting that game. Call him the glove because he catches everything. That's why.
Fair enough.
So the guard play has been very good for West Virginia this season, Sid. But it's pretty clear, and I think even Mark Kellogg has admitted this, that the missing piece for them last year was post play. they didn't have the same quality of post plays, maybe some of the teams that they were, that they wanted, where they wanted to be, right? To play at that level where they could win a championship and could host NCAA tournament games. West Virginia did win an NCAA tournament game last year, but lost on the road at UNC. They go into the transfer portal. Yeah, Gia Cook has been really good as their leading scorer, but Carter McRae and Mimi Wheeler, two post players that transferred into this program in the offseason, they really have been difference makers in a different way than Harrison, filling that much-needed role to be effective in the interior.
Yeah, Mimi, I remember at one point in the season, because she was getting at least 10 boards a game for a while. Like, it was racking up every single game. If we knew anything, she was going to reach double figures in that category on the stat sheet. I remember her, because someone asked her post-game, like, you're not the tallest out there on the court, which she, as a post player, she's not. But she said, I'm more physical. And I just know that just not being scared to go up there, grab the ball, get hit, whatever it may be, I'll get those rebounds. So I think that's huge to have that kind of mentality going in, knowing, yes, there might be someone who's, 6 foot, whatever, going against me, but I have no fear. I'm going to go up there and grab that rebound no matter what.
All right, so let's focus in on the matchups, the first and second round. West Virginia playing Miami, Ohio in the 4-13 game that's coming up Saturday at 5 Eastern on ESPNU. Before we get into the matchup specifically, though, Sid, it's possible that the attendance record for WVU women's basketball is going to fall this weekend. As we record this Tuesday night, podcast will be published sometime Wednesday. It hasn't been officially announced as a sellout, but it seems like we're trending in that direction. The women's basketball attendance record is 13,000 plus, 13,400-ish for a game against Baylor when Brittany Griner was suiting up for the Bears. 14,000 near capacity, maybe even a sellout. That seems like it's genuinely possible here and maybe even expected at this point. What do you think?
I mean, tickets open Monday morning at 10 a.m. and less than an hour, 11,000 tickets were sold. So, I mean, I feel like that speaks for itself. It says a lot there. Also, in their Sunday's watch party, some people, a part of the program, kind of wanted it to be in the Coliseum so more people could come. But Coach Kellogg was like, let's just keep it a little smaller, because you open the whole Coliseum, who knows how many people would show up. And in that little Clark, or wherever they had it, in the little, what's it called in the Coliseum?
The Clark Mountaineer Club.
Yes. In there, it was already packed. Like, you had to, like, you're going through each other, excuse me, pardon me, not trying to bump each other. So I don't know if that shows anything. I think people really care about this team. And something that Coach Kellogg said, I think on Monday, that stood out to me, is he's like, this means a lot for women's basketball as a whole, not just here in West Virginia, but as a whole. And then you think about the little kids who go, all those young fans who are at the games and they stick around for autographs. And you saw on senior night, oh my gosh, that lasted for so long. So like that just means a lot. And to have it here in Morgantown, I just think is huge for the community and the state of West Virginia as a whole. So I hope it's a sellout. I'm ready to see it be loud. Like I saw someone comment on Twitter, it better be as loud as the Education Day game.
I think that's really valid. Here's the thing. 14,000 grown adults may not make the same amount of noise as 7,000 or 8,000 elementary school students.
Give them a little liquid courage, Nick. I never doubt them.
Yeah, that's fair. Although, again, I don't know if enough mountain beers could really match like some orange juice or Mountain Dew for the kids right before the game. I don't know, because the Education Day game is
6-7%.
Oh, stop
it. Okay, stop moving on.
I am excited to see how this is going to go, for the reason that West Virginia fans always show up to support teams, but particularly teams that are winning, right? Like, the fans throughout the state are just eager to support teams that win. And it doesn't matter the sport. It doesn't matter male or female. And that's why I'm confident that these games are going to be sold out or close to it. Just look at some of the other sports, the Olympic sports, soccer, men's soccer. I mean, look at what has happened over the last few years. When West Virginia plays Marshall, it's sold out. They have to bring in extra bleachers. The state attendance record for soccer gets broken time after time. Look at baseball. at Kendrick Family Ballpark, right? The team has broken single game and single season attendance records. It seems like every time they play Pitt, there's more and more fans that they're just shoving into the stadium, right? So like the evidence is there that people are going to show up. And then you consider that it's on a Saturday afternoon. The men's team is not playing a postseason game until April, in the Crown. It's looking really good for this to be a sellout. And Coach Kellogg used the phrase magical a couple of days ago when chatting with us, Sid, and I really do think that this has all the makings of a truly magical environment for West Virginia.
Yeah, I agree. And they know what if using that same word, like a magical and something so big could feel like in a arena playing at Iowa 2 seasons ago. So they know what that feeling is like. So, not everybody on the team, but Coach Kellogg does anyway. And so does Jordan Harrison. So I just hope that happens here. It's going to be so fun.
Right. Absolutely. Okay. So let's talk matchup, right? West Virginia against Miami University. I think it's a unique and interesting matchup in the sense that both of these teams have some similarities. Maybe Miami's not going to try to press you and beat your teeth in for 40 minutes in the same way that West Virginia might. But this is a team that's really, really solid defensively, led the MAC in points allowed, and is just playing really good basketball down the stretch.
Yeah, won 8 of its last 9 games. So the Redhawks are on a roll right now, too, just like WVU playing really good basketball, like you said. Their head coach, Glenn Box, was the MAC Coach of the Year. And he is quoted a lot, but one of the big things he said is our defense gives us confidence. So that's what they're going to lean on. Obviously, that's something that WVU leans on, too. But in their minds, if they can play really good on the defensive end of the side of the ball, it's going to help them on offense by slowing down their opponent. But I think that'll be tough when you've got a lot of fans backing the home team in West Virginia. But remember, they earned that to play here in Morgantown. So, I just know this team is very relying on their defense. So that'll be what they'll go into Saturday's game plan with.
Yeah, look, I think it's also interesting from this standpoint that if you're a good defensive team, the phrase defense travels, right? That's legitimate in a scenario like this where you're playing a tournament game, an elimination game on somebody else's home floor, right? If you can play really good defense, you might be able to take the crowd out of it a little bit. You might really be able to give yourself a fighting chance. And I think that that's what makes Miami uniquely positioned to give West Virginia a real battle Saturday. Like, I don't think that it's going to be easy. It might end up being a solid West Virginia win, but there are going to be times, I think, where the game is going to feel a little bit uncomfortable, right? There's going to be an opponent that's not going to back down, that's going to play solid defense, and then you get into those tricky moments where you're like, oh man, there's 12 or 13,000 people here. We've never played in front of that many people in this arena, and and things get a little bit tight, right? Like, I totally expect West Virginia to be able to navigate those situations, but those situations are going to pop up. Maybe the question is, do they have enough lemons to shock the system when they do pop up, Sid?
Yeah, I know. Oh my gosh. That's such a interesting thing. I still want to try it sometimes to shock the system, but I don't want to be too jacked up, you know?
Sid, I have an idea. Shameless plug for the Mountaineer Game Day women's basketball special coming up at 10 a.m. on your local Next Star station and 10:30 on Sportsnet Pittsburgh Saturday morning. I want a live shot with Sydney. This is the executive producer of Golden Blue Nation speaking, Sid. I want a live shot with Sydney biting down on a lemon.
You know what? Just for you, Nick, and Coach Kellogg, I'll do it for you.
You want to go?
If I have to stand outside, though, I'm not doing it. I'm just kidding.
Fair enough. Okay, so West Virginia, Miami, that's the first round matchup. If the Mountaineers advance, they would face the winner of 5-seed Kentucky and 12-seed James Madison. I think, Sid, that James Madison, again, to me, is really interesting. This entire quadrant that West Virginia is hosting has got some really, really high-quality teams. James Madison has won 12 games in a row and is one of the hottest teams in the entire field of 68. Ran the table, won the Sun Belt Conference tournament as either, I think, a 3 or a 4 seed. And then you've got Kentucky, which was eliminated from the SEC tournament early, and that's probably what opened the door for West Virginia to host and knock the Wildcats out of position potentially to host. So you've got a Kentucky team that doesn't have to travel far, that's probably going to be motivated by the fact that it could have been hosting and now has to go on the road. Not to mention that the SEC put 10 teams in the women's tournament and is extremely good. So maybe it's like no wonder that Kentucky had a bit of an earlier exit from the SEC tournament, because that league is terrific and has been terrific this season. So I think either way, if West Virginia is able to get past Miami and advances to Monday's game, it's going to have a really tough test in order to try to get to the Sweet 16 for the first time since 1992.
Yeah, a stat that stood out for me for JMU is this team ranks in the top 15 nationally in rebounds per game. So they have good post play, which could be a difference maker for when they play Kentucky, and if they were to win that and move on to whoever they would play in the second round. But I think for a team, coming out of the Sun Belt like that, top 15 nationally, that's a pretty good stat line going into this weekend. And then for Kentucky, they're an interesting team. If you look at their schedule and how things were, they were ranked as high as 6 at one point in the country. They go on a 3-game losing streak in January. Granted, there's good teams in the SEC, so that it's a tough conference, just like the Big 12. Big 12 is a tough conference too. And then they go on to win 4 of 7 games in March, and then, like you said, in the tournament. So it's an interesting team. It almost feels like they haven't fully found their rhythm yet at the right time. Don't want that to be this weekend if West Virginia wins round 1 and then has to face them round 2. But it's just that the Wildcats are an interesting team if you go and kind of look at their schedule, how things have gone, and especially their last kind of 4 weeks of play.
Absolutely. All right, that's Sydney Cariel, Golden Blue Nation's Mountaineer Basketball Insider. Look for coverage from her and Ryan Decker Saturday and into Monday, assuming West Virginia is able to take care of business and advance to the second round. Make sure you keep an eye out for her, too, on Mountaineer Game Day coming to your TV screens Saturday morning at 10 and 10:30. Sid, really appreciate you jumping on the podcast with us.
Looking forward to eating lemons with you on Saturday, Nick.
Thank you very much, Sid. All right, we need to step aside for a quick break, but we've got a great treat coming your way right after this quick word from our sponsor, Mountain State Oral and Facial Surgery, home of the Same Day Smile.
The reason I came to the practice was because I had had some teeth extracted and I wanted to get some replacements for it. We did a treatment plan to see how many implants they were going to place, and now I'm actually just waiting to get the crowns. The thing I liked the most about coming here, I was greeted with a smile, everything ran smooth, and that they were really going to do what I wanted them to do to make my smile a little better. They're some of the best doctors, and you will get good quality care.
Searching for a mortgage lender that's 100% local, personal, and focused on home loans? First Green Mortgage has been serving West Virginia for more than 35 years, and they can assist you with every step of your home ownership journey. Visit them in Bridgeport or Morgantown or at fgm.bank.
Golden Blue Nation podcast continues. Before the break, promised you a surprise. Here we go with that surprise. Joining us now is a WVU Sports Hall of Famer who still to this day leads the program in three-point shooting percentage, none other than the Duchess, Meg Bulger. Meg, so good to have you on the show. We've done so many games together on ESPN+. Really excited to have you on our podcast to talk about this awesome weekend of college basketball. I know the players are fired up, the coaches too, the fans, as evidenced by how quickly tickets went when the ticket portal opened. What about for you as an alumna of the program? How exciting is this?
Yeah, no, Nick, thank you so much for having me on because, like you said, we've been in the thick of it, calling games for years together. So this is just such a special moment. As you mentioned, the fans, West Virginia is in our blood and we love it so much. So for my sister and I think it's really cool to see how far the program has come. I think it's really cool to see that the state gets to host now, basically, and the fans that are supporting and rallying around the women's team is so incredible to see. They've worked so hard. This team they've been consistent. I think it's easy to really fall in love with this team when you go and watch them. They're just so much fun. So just so proud, so excited for them and for Coach Kellogg and his staff.
You mentioned Coach Kellogg. What makes him different? What makes this team different, Meg?
They're just special. I think, you watched all these great teams. And even last year, you have JJ Quinterly. And to me, it's just the pieces have really put together now. They have a post presence. They have their shooter. We have our slasher, Gia Cook. Jordan Harrison has just completely elevated her game. Mimi Wheeler has just become such a dominant force. And what they are doing defensively, I think that's what's special. That's what makes this team really special, because when you can rely on your defense, defense wins championships. There's a reason that's said. It's not just a cliche. So I just think that gives them such an advantage moving forward into NCAAs, because teams you'll prepare for it, but you just don't know what hits you until it happens.
So, Meg, you as a player went to the NCAA tournament. Your team went twice. You played once in the NCAA tournament. Can you take me into inside the locker room? What's it like to prepare for these NCAA tournament games? And then what's it like if you advance to have maybe a day or two in a tournament setting to get ready for your next opponent? Can West Virginia's defensive intensity make the Mountaineers a really difficult scout for these teams?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest advantage that they have. Everything's just a little different. I had to go on the road. We went to Ohio State one year, and then the pit out in New Mexico another year. But it's just, there's just more hype with everything. There's people walking you to the lockers. There's, there was Gatorades and that's how old I am, that we were just excited about, coolers in the locker room with food and drinks. I mean, there's just more hype around it. We were getting on TV, which we had never done before. So there's just a lot of excitement around it. There's no doubt. So I really can't even imagine how the players are feeling. Being able to stay home and play on your home court is such an advantage. That is something in women's basketball that, if you are able to do that and you put the work into host and you're granted that, that's such a huge, huge advantage to walk, and you keep your same routine. Then, you keep your same, locker room. You're familiar with the court, the rims, just everything about it keeps that, familiar for you, which is really important. And that is a challenge, having to jump right into a scout probably that night if you win. But I think at this moment in this time in the season, for everybody, more about execution. You've kind of done everything already. You've faced different teams or similar teams, but it really comes down to just West Virginia, what they do, executing. But I think such a challenge for teams is going to try to mimic, even in practice, what West Virginia's defense does. And I just don't think that you're able to mimic that until, you're out there live and you're facing it. So it's going to be very difficult, I think.
Meg, if I remember correctly, back in X amount of years ago when you played, it really wasn't all that long ago, but the tournament has changed so much. You guys were the 5 seed playing New Mexico, a 12 seed, and the game was played in New Mexico, right? It was essentially a home game. What was that like to go into another team's arena in a postseason setting? I know that Coach Kellogg's team has done this 2 years in a row, but I imagine that it has to add to the pressure, or at least the feeling of, man, we only get one chance at this and we're fighting for one more practice, one more film session, one more game.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And it's, it's intimidating. And going to the pit, I had no idea how, that it was pretty famous for, being an intense environment and arena. So to go out there on the road, you have to get over that mindset of, why are we getting sent out here and this and that? You just have to go in, battle, be the underdog, take whatever it is that motivates you. But it's just, it was pretty awesome to be able to go out and win. And like you said, you just want one more opportunity, because you know that this could potentially be the last. And for the seniors, especially, I think, that weighs heavily on you.
So with all that said, Meg, the Coliseum and West Virginia fans are uniquely positioned here, right? Because if WVU can really put 12, 13, maybe even 14,000 fans in the Coliseum for these games and break an attendance record, that could create an environment that makes it difficult on Miami Saturday, and then potentially a second round opponent Monday. When you close your eyes and think about how things could look on Saturday, what do you see?
Man, I think it's going to be, the energy is going to be palpable. I think, I'm just picturing the Mountaineer coming out, firing the gun off. I think the fans, they've been great all year. All the fans that have supported women's basketball over the years have been tremendous. So hey, we welcome everyone that wants to come out and see and support them. But it is, I think the players just in warmups need to just take it in. Don't run from it. Don't be afraid of it. Don't let that feel nervous. Use that nervousness as excitement, and really take in the moment and enjoy it, because it's so special, and not a lot of players get to experience that, especially on your home floor.
Chatting with former All-Big East and All-American sharpshooter for the Mountaineers, Meg Bulger, here on the Golden Blue Nation podcast, brought to you by Mountain State Oral and Facial Surgery, your premier dental implant destination. Meg, Coach Bulger is who we're talking to here, by the way. I've spoken to a lot of coaches who say great guard play is what can separate you in tournament settings. But I'm curious, and you mentioned this earlier about West Virginia's post presence. Is that the missing piece that it didn't have in previous years when it had a star like J.J. Quinterly, who was one of the best players in the country? Is the play of Carter McRae and Mimi Wheeler the thing that could separate West Virginia over these next few days?
Yeah, absolutely. I think having that inside-out presence, that frees up your guards. That frees up Sydney Shaw, Gia Cook, and Jordan Harrison to do what they need to do on the perimeter. You kind of don't worry sometimes about taking a quick shot because you have an opportunity to get an offensive rebound. I just think, and especially with their defense, being able to finish, secure a rebound, and get out and transition and run, everything just plays into all those pieces coming together for West Virginia right now. I think as you look through the season, they've never declined. They've always taken a step each and every game. I don't think since, and I don't even count this as back-to-back losses when they returned from Bahamas and then, dropped it to Villanova. That I'm like, all right, well, you were away in this one. But since then, they've never lost back-to-back games. I think they're peaking at the exact right time. And you can just tell their chemistry on the floor is absolutely incredible. And, of course, guard play and Sydney Shaw is shooting the ball really well right now. I think Jordan Harrison has established her as a premier point guard in the country. So to put those pieces inside and for how much Carter McRae has grown this season has been tremendous. And then you can sub in, CeCe Riviere, steal some minutes here and there. And Jordan Thomas, like they've really just gotten all the pieces. And even Riley McAleskey and Sydney Woodley, they come in and contribute and they're good minutes. So, I just think from top to bottom, they just really have put everything together. And I just keep going back to the defense. I think that's what's going to separate them for sure.
It's pretty incredible when you look at this team, especially in the Big 12 tournament, like the evidence of those roles for players is just really specific, right? Like you've got your post players, you've got Gia Cook, the slasher, you've got Sydney Shaw providing the 3-point artillery, you've got the players like Woodley and McAleskey to either provide defensive or offensive support off the bench. But you mentioned Harrison a moment ago, who was the defensive player of the year in the conference and then the postseason all-tournament team most outstanding player. How have you seen her elevate her game here over this last 6-game stretch where they've gone undefeated to close out the regular season and then run the table in Kansas City to win a trophy?
I think it's just her confidence. I think, she's had J.J. Quinterly the past couple years and, maybe she wasn't a senior. But I think she has really adapted that this is her team. She's been in West Virginia for a few years now. This is her team. She's the leader. And I think she sets a tone every single game. Her defense, in games that we've called Nick, I would pause the game when I got home and go, tell my daughter, you need to come watch how she just defended this on ball right here. She just sets a tone with what she does. She's relentless. And I think her offensive game has grown so much where she understands that she can be a scorer. She needs to be a scorer. And she's an absolute offensive threat. So she's just really become a complete player. And it's just been so much fun to watch her and her growth throughout the last couple of years here.
I would be super curious. Somebody on Coach Kellogg's staff has to keep track of deflections. I know that's not an official stat that you can find on the sports information website, but she has to have hundreds of deflections with how active she is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the thing. It always just gives you a chance. You can, if you're on the weak side, you can kind of go and anticipate for that steal because you trust the entire defense is going to help. They're going to recover. The rotation is going to be there. So when you can trust, in that front line, Jordan Harrison, if she's defending point guard, you can trust that player so much defensively. And they all have to buy in. And, we talked about chemistry. There's been teams that I've had where talent for talent, it was probably a better team. However, when every single person understands their role, when every single person, you look down the bench and Coach Kellogg's looking to sub in, when he knows exactly what you're giving, what production you are going to give every single game when you step on the floor. I mean, you can't beat that. And I think that this team is just really putting that together. Everyone understands, respects, and plays their role however it is needed in every single game. And you're just really seeing that the way they close out games. They're peaking at such a great time, and it's really exciting.
I love the dedication to the Bill Cowerism, peaking at the right time, Meg. Spoken like a true Pittsburgher. We're wrapping up here with Meg Bulger, the former WVU All-Big East and All-American guard and current ESPN Plus broadcaster. Meg, when we call games together, you always come to the table with your keys to the game. So hit us with keys to the game for West Virginia in the first round against the Miami Redhawks.
Yeah, there's a couple. Some of them are some intangibles like the crowd. Use that environment, use that to your advantage. You got that home seating, so use it to your advantage. Get the crowd into it early. I think West Virginia, just their ability to force turnovers, they have to continue doing what they did. Set the tempo, create turnovers. Defense to offense is the name of their game. And I think just don't let teams hang around. Don't let teams get a little confidence. You don't want Miami of Ohio coming in, hanging around throughout the game, getting a little confidence. And, the last couple of minutes, then are back and forth and every possession starts really mattering. I think really establish yourself early, establish dominance early, play with confidence, use the crowd, and rely on, don't reinvent the wheel. Defense, offense, forcing turnovers is what's going to happen.
All right, Meg, appreciate you jumping on the show. It's always a pleasure to talk hoops with you, and just know that, man, what an exciting time it is to be a West Virginia women's basketball fan. This really has the makings of a one-of-a-kind weekend here in Morgantown.
It really does. I'm so excited for it. Thank you so much for having me, Nick, and let's go Mountaineers.
Big thanks to our Mountaineer basketball insider, Sydney Cariel, and ESPN broadcaster Meg Bulger for jumping on the Golden Blue Nation podcast to preview the NCAA Tournament. Action coming to Morgantown, tipping off at Hope Coliseum Saturday at 2:30 on ESPNU as 5-seed Kentucky takes on 12-seed James Madison. Then at 5, it's the main event, 4-seed West Virginia against 13-seed Miami, Ohio, as the Mountaineers host an NCAA Tournament game for the first time since 1992. And we'll be there all day, starting the morning of the game with a special edition of Mountaineer Game Day. It airs at 10 a.m. on your local Nexstar stations. Those stations are WBOI in Clarksburg, WTRF in Wheeling, WOWK in Charleston, and WVNS in Beckley, or at 10:30 on Sportsnet Pittsburgh. So if you live in the region, make sure you check us out, as we'll have live coverage from Hope Coliseum to get you set for what's bound to be an exceptional weekend of college basketball here in Morgantown. That's a wrap on this edition of the Golden Blue Nation podcast. We're brought to you as always by Mountain State Oral and Facial Surgery, your premier dental implant destination. I'm Nick Farrell signing off. Talk to you next time.